Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to another deck profile. It's been a little bit of a while since the last one, but hopefully we'll get more into a regular season with these guys. But this would be a pretty good sort of re-intro into deck profiles, which is my Panda deck. So this is a deck I ran most recently at the States ARG that if you had listened to the podcast or seen our vlog, which may or may not be out yet, I don't know when this video is releasing, you know that there were mistakes made as far as cards that should be in the deck that are not, and I'll go over that as we go through. But this deck runs very consistently and is very good at just killing your opponent, if not in one turn, then in 2 turns usually. And it just feels really nice to play, especially with the surprise factor, and even with the surprise factor gone, going into game 2 and stuff, it's usually still strong enough to keep itself above water. So, like I said, we got our Panda ruler. Always remember that he gains gems when pandas enter the field. Very important to remember. The judgment side, if you guys aren't too familiar with Panda, when he enters the field, he gets 2 gems of any one attribute. And you can banish a light gem to give him plus 500 attack and defense. You can do that once per turn. You can banish 2 light gems to give him or to recover him. And you can do that once per turn. You can banish a darkness gem to give a J/Resonator -5/5 as many times as you want. And you can banish a blue gem to give him flying. All of those are sort of things that you want to look out for. The darkness gems obviously is good for clearing your opponent's field. You mainly want to use it for things like when you swing in to destroy a blocker, especially a J ruler, and the blue gem can help as far as flying over if your opponent doesn't have any flying, so you can save those darkness gems for something more pressing and different things like that. A lot of different strategies. We'll start with a stone deck. Going to be pretty straightforward. So we got 3 Magic Stone of Heat Ray. This is something I'm actually probably going to alter. I'm going to probably reduce it down to 2 Magic Stone of Heat Ray because 3 just seems excessive, honestly, after a little bit. We run 3 of Prisha's Memoria. That's for that yellow-green. And then 4 of the Magic Stone of Gusting Skies. The main yellow-green, obviously, that you would see inside of a deck. This deck. Now, so we'll go ahead and get into the deck itself. We'll start with the Resonators. So we run 2 Sprinting Flame Horse. So the reason for this, for the most obvious reason, is to give your, not only to give the Panda swiftness, but also for the buff effect. I'll go over the math a little bit later, but most often you'll see when you can swing into your opponent with the 1 main card, you're usually short 200 damage to kill your opponent. You're usually swinging for 3,800 attack if you get your OTK off. So this helps with that. In case you don't even need swiftness, just the buff effect is good. We run 4 of the Gem Mallet Panda. So this is the most consistent way to gain gems inside of this deck. And it not only is good for getting gems when it enters, you only ever want to play, unless you really need to play more, you want to play 1 per turn. So you still get that light gem effect off of Panda, as well as any gem you want. I usually use light gem first choice because you really want to build up that light gem stockpile to a minimum of 3 to 4. And then the more the merrier after that. And usually only 1 dark gem and maybe 1 blue gem. But you can vary it up if you had trouble. Maybe you didn't get a red stone to play your Sprinting Flame Horse, or you didn't get a green stone and you need to play some counter spells. You can produce, when he enters the field, produce a red or green gem so that later on you can tap him to banish that gem to produce that will. And also having extra light gems, you can banish or tap him to banish light gems in order to judgment even earlier, or judgment and have enough leftover will to play your Sprinting Flame Horse and other combos. So it's very essential to the deck. Next we have Escape Jeweler, to the dismay of Mike Rance. I took this out and then I ended up putting it back in because the gem creation consistency is just really strong. I run 4 Escape Jewelers, and it's because you can enter the field, gain any gem, and then being able to bounce and rest a Resonator is really good to help stave off really heavy aggro decks that might be swinging in with Resonators with a lot of attack. You can rest them so that way you can still survive long enough if it's taking you a bit longer to judgment and do your turn combo. And then having him bounce into your hand and being able to play him again for only 1 will to gain another gem of any attribute is really just helps with the consistency of the deck overall, I think. Moving on, the rest of the deck is spells, or chants, rather. As you can see, that's very important in an OTK deck that relies on the ruler. So first we run 4 discovery. This is to help search through our deck to get the correct cards we need to do the combo, and also being able to gain a gem of any attribute while you're doing it is just great. Making sure, like I said, you have that minimum 3 to 4 light gems, and then either 1 blue gem or 1 black gem before judgmenting. We have 4 Severing Winds, 3 Severing Winds, and this is just to help with countering stuff. Especially if your opponent's playing multiple cards, you can use this to either slow them down while you're waiting to judgment so they're not going too heavy. It helps is sometimes maybe to even hard cast it if you really have to, especially with gem out pandas. Make it easy to hard cast Severing early game if you need to help stop some pretty big combos, especially when going against like Time Spinning Witch and stuff. I found it helpful. We run 3 Miscalculation, once again to help stave off some of those aggro decks. And by killing some of those Resonators that might be swinging in early on, you also help get rid of potential blockers later on. So when you swing in, you have just less stuff to worry about. Next we run 4 Arrival of the Hero. This is for obvious reasons. You pay 2 light less for this if you are already judgmented, your J-Ruler is on the field. And the second effect, we don't worry about the first effect. The second effect, destroy target rested Resonator. So you use this to destroy blockers as you're swinging in, or just to get rid of troublemakers if you've judgmented and are just waiting to do something. I don't know. I've used it for a variety of situations, obviously, and maybe even have to hard cast it sometimes, but it's mainly for your judgment and to get rid of potential blockers. Next, we run Approaching the Truth. We run 4 of these guys. And this is just, once again, to help with that deck consistency, to help mill through it and pull the exact hand that you need to. Being able to look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them at the bottom or top and then draw a card is really great inside of this deck, being able to fix your hand that way, especially if you game 1 and you went against a deck and you just have some useless cards, like maybe Miscalculation is completely useless against an IU deck and stuff like that. So this helps burn through some of that. It's just helpful overall. We run 2 Fair Spell inside of here. Maybe run more or not. I didn't want to run too many counters inside of the deck and have it bogged down too much, but this is mainly to help against lowrights, people lowrighting either Panda's Enter effect or any of the abilities to banish gems and recover or gain stats and stuff like that. This is just to help get rid of those lowrights essentially. 2 Rapid Growth. So this is just to add some damage, extra damage cards to your Panda. And the reason I chose Rapid Growth specifically and only run 2 is just because of the Remnant effect. It's nice if you play it and it gets canceled, having it in the graveyard to play again. So you just have options essentially. I run 4 Magic Sweets. Magic Sweets is a card that I really like because not only does it give your Panda +2 attack and defense, which helps with that 2 damage you're usually short of that I mentioned before, but it also gives it barrier, so it helps protect your Panda in case they ran something like that would destroy it. Pretty straightforward. And so yeah, I really like Magic Sweets. And next we run 2 Power of the Emperor. So this one is just your J Resonator gains +6/+6. And we run 2 Winds of Vitality, which is an identical card, essentially with just a different name. And the reason for running just 2 and 2 is just because they're identical cards, so why not? And also I was like, oh, might as well run 2 and 2, because on the off chance someone's running Alice, the Resonator, and decides to God's Art and name, say, Winds of Vitality, you still have Power of the Emperor to play. And so the damage I was talking about is if you play Panda and you're judgmented and you do the light ability to give him +5/+5, and then you play Winds of Vitality or Power of the Emperor, which is the most likely combo, that puts him at 1919. So if you swing into your opponent for 1900 and recover and swing in again, you've done 3800 damage. And so that's the most consistent amount of damage you usually do, but it's also usually short that 200. So all these different ways of adding damage at only 1 cost, whether it be more Winds of Vitality, whether it be Rapid Growth, Magic Sweets, Sprinting Flame Horse, all of those help sort of get that extra 200 in. And then some, maybe if your opponent's running a life gain deck. Now, what I had mentioned on the onset is there's cards that are missing that should be in here. And so I'll talk about that. At the ARG, I had went in with this deck and a side deck. This side deck, I'll just briefly go over. It just basically was a bunch of Resonators, Amethyst, Rose, Technique, that chick, that dude. I ran Last Days of Powerless Dragonoid to help against Kirik, to slow him down, because Kirik is a big problem against this deck because you need to try and outpace it essentially. Zinzane's Bodyguard to help with gem generation, and then Final Breeze to help mainly against stuff like Time Spinning Witch with its high cost card to cancel that without having to hardcast Severing. And the card that's missing both in the side deck and the main deck is Lorite. So Lorite is the Resonator that with quick cast, 1 cost, and it cancels an ability. And the reason you want that is because it helps against, for example, Time Spinning Witch was a deck I played against. It stops all the God's Arts that Time Spinning Witch does, such as stopping you from recovering the God's Art that recovers God's Arts. It stops Mosasaurus's Enter ability that stops your stones from recovering. For Kirik, it stops his tap ability to recover his strength counters. It stops PL's Enter effect and many other things as well. And it's just very good, especially for stopping things that either burn Panda, hurt him. If Kirik flips and burns Panda, for example, which is what happened, and then ticks back up to 15 counters, you can Lorite that 15 counters, if I remember correctly. And so that Panda survives, and now they're out of counters. A whole lot of scenarios that Lorite is very important in. So I would highly recommend putting at least 3 Lorite in your side deck. If you want a main deck Lorite, I would only do maybe 2 Lorite in your main deck. And you can maybe switch out like 1 miscalculation and 1 other card, or maybe 2 miscalculations, depending on how you want the deck to run, to throw those Lorites in. And if you're wondering why the side deck looks the way it does, the idea was if like game 1, I win, and so they start side decking, and they're going to side deck stuff that really heavily hurts my J ruler and all that. I would switch to this side deck and switch out a bunch of cards so that my ruler still can generate gems and I can still judgment and do a whole lot of damage, but it'd be a later turn. And in the meantime, I have all these Resonators populating the field and doing damage that they now have to not only deal with but spend resources for. And so because I've switched up strategies, they're using cards they might have saved for my ruler, or maybe just completely being thrown off. Just a whole bunch of different stuff. But I wanted to completely pivot my strategy to Resonators rather than my ruler, and to try and bait a lot of stuff out while passively creating a crap ton of gems. So when I flip, it's going to be even bigger. It just will take longer to do than before. But yeah, so that's my Panda deck. Let me know what you guys think, what you thought of this deck profile overall. I'll have the deck list in the description below, and hopefully I'll have an article for it as well on our website, tcgscripts.com, which will have the deck list. And what I usually do is I have the deck list and then I put my top 5 cards and as far as the most important cards. If you were to go and alter this deck, you could alter anything except for these like 3 to 5 cards that I think are the most important. And so if I have that article ready, it'll be linked in the description as well. And so yeah, let me know what you guys think. Any changes you would make, let me know below, and we'll see you guys next time.